Colossal question.
What makes something smell really good or bad? Smells are nothing more than teeny tiny little particles floating in the air around us that we suck up through our nostrils. That odor-filled air heads right up your nasal passages in your nose, where the odor molecules are finally trapped by a thin bit of tissue called olfactory epithelium. These special nerve cells are covered in cilia, which are like tiny hairs that stick out and trap the smell particles as they float past. The cells then send a signal directly to your brain, telling it what different smells are entering your nose. Most pungent odors, both nice and nasty, tend to be made up of lots of different odor molecules that mix together to create the distinct smell we recognize. Every single time you breathe in through your nose, the olfactory epithelium is alerted, and the process starts again, over and over, all day long. Most of the time, whether or not we think something smells comes down to memory. Our brains are great at remembering certain smells and associating them with good or bad memories. For instance, your absolute favorite meal might smell mouth-watering to you, but stinky to someone else who's never tried it before. That's why there's so many smells out there that some people love and others can't stand. Okay, so most of the time our memories help us decide if something smells good or bad, but what about the rest of the time? Why are there some smells that seem to automatically make us gag? Well, it just comes down to pure instinct. Take blood, for example. Both the sight and the smell of blood is well known to repel animals who are prey, like deer, rabbits, and humans. Even if you've never smelled blood before, it's likely to make you squeamish right away. But to predatory animals like wolves or tigers, blood smells tasty. So we tend to steer clear of places that smell bloody and might be full of predators. There's other more obvious examples too, like poop. It's super unhealthy to touch poop, so our sense of smell tells us from day one to stay clear. The same is true for lots of things that might get you sick too, like rotting food, for instance. That rotting smell is really just the smell of dangerous bacteria breaking down the cells of the food and releasing an icky chemical called hydrogen sulfide. This toxic stench smells so bad that it makes you want to stay far away, making the stink of our old, unhealthy food bad enough that you'd never consider eating it, even if you don't have the memories to back it up. So when someone tells you to just trust your instincts, you can confidently tell them, I already do. Just don't expect them to know what you're talking about.
Have you ever stopped and wondered what earwax actually is? The stuff we call earwax has a more scientific name, cerumen. It's made by glands deep in the ear canal and slowly oozes its way towards the opening of the ear. As icky as it might seem, earwax is actually good for you. The sticky cerumen acts like a protective barrier for the super sensitive skin inside your ear. The earwax does a lot to protect the delicate parts of your inner ear. It traps dirt and germs, it keeps water out, and it collects bacteria and other dusty allergens and irritants. Usually, earwax naturally disappears over time, eventually moving from deep in the ear all the way out to the opening where it falls, flakes, or washes away. Then, fresh new earwax is created and the cycle starts again. Sometimes, earwax can build up over time if your glands are producing too much of the stuff. When that happens, the extra wax can dry up and harden, causing a blockage that can hurt or make it hard to hear. Even though they seem like the perfect tool for the job, you really shouldn't use cotton swabs to try and get rid of excess earwax. Usually, it just pushes the extra wax deeper and packs it down, making the problem worse. The inside of the ear is very sensitive, so if you're walking around with way too much earwax, you're better off going to the doctor rather than trying to scoop it out yourself. So, why do we have earwax? To help keep our ears healthy, even if sometimes it can get a little bit gross. Why do we burp? Our burps are really nothing more than extra gas finding its way out of our body. In this case, our mouths. It might be gross, but it's also a normal way for our bodies to get rid of all the extra air we swallow throughout the day. You see, every time we swallow a bit of food or sip a beverage, we swallow little bits of air along with whatever we're actually trying to eat or drink. That air is mostly made up of gases, mainly nitrogen and oxygen, which end up inside our stomach along with everything else we swallow. Over time, the gases start to build up more and more until there's too much and it's gotta get out. So, some gas is squeezed out the stomach back up into the esophagus, the tube that connects our mouth to our belly. From there, the gas is pushed up the esophagus and out through the mouth in the form of a burp. Disgusting and cool. That's also why we tend to start burping a lot more when we sip on a fizzy drink. All those sparkling bubbles in your beverage are just bits of carbon dioxide gas. That's why we call bubbly drinks carbonated. All that carbon dioxide you're drinking down quickly collects in your stomach and causes you to start burping it back out almost immediately. You can also cause yourself to burp by eating or drinking too fast. As you quickly chow down on a snack, you're swallowing way more air with every bite than if you took your time with smaller bites. Same goes for a straw. All that extra air you swallow with each sip causes extra burps. The good news? Burping is rarely a health problem. It's just usually pretty gross, and in certain situations, downright rude. But it's also natural. So don't fret if you need to burp after sucking down an entire extra large soda in one sip. Just, try to choose your spots. Why do we have fingernails? Human beings are part of the primate family of animals, which include all kinds of apes, monkeys, tarsers, lemurs, and lorises. One of the many things that set primates apart are their flat nails instead of sharp claws. Both apes and humans alike use our flat fingernails to help us pick things up, pick off little things like bugs, or hold on to things like branches or a tool. Nowadays, most humans don't really use their toes to pick up very many things, maybe just a stray piece of dirty laundry here or there. But our other primate cousins use their toes and toenails all the time. If we didn't have nails, the tips of our fingers would just be weird, soft lumps of skin. The hard nail helps keep our fingertips soft but firm in just the right way to suit all our picking, grabbing, and gripping needs. Okay, so our nails help us use our hands, but why don't we just have claws like most other mammals? Why do we have nails instead of claws? The truth is, no matter how cool it might seem to have claws, nails are much better suited for the sort of things we use our hands for. Nails are wide, thin, flat, slightly curved, and grow on the backside of your fingertip or toe. Claws, on the other hand, are thicker, pointed, curved, and stick out from the ends of their fingers and toes. Nails help you pick up teeny tiny objects much better than claws, and tools are much easier to use too. But not every animal lives like humans, and that's where claws come in handy. They can help an animal quickly scurry up a tree or dig a hole, no tools required. Sure, monkeys and apes climb trees too, but they do it by gripping onto branches rather than holding themselves up by their claws. So, why do we have nails on our fingers and toes? Because, as humans, claws just wouldn't cut it. How do our tongues actually taste the things we eat? You might have noticed that your tongue isn't exactly smooth. It's covered in tiny little bumps all over. Those tiny little guys are called papillae, and they have touch sensors, temperature sensors, and maybe most importantly,
bundles of taste buds packed inside. Taste buds are tiny little organs with even smaller hairs on them called microvilli. Those hairs pick up flavor molecules from the food you eat and sends messages to your brain, telling it how it tastes. There are 5 basic tastes that our buds can pick up: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami, which is a savory or meaty flavor. Now, the tongue might be the star of the show, but it doesn't get all the credit. All your other senses work together alongside your sense of taste to create a flavor. The look, feel, smell, and even the sound of your food, combined with the info from your taste buds, tells your brain exactly how something tastes. Our eyes can help us recognize things we've eaten before or decide if something is fresh. Texture can also make a big difference, like smooth or crunchy peanut butter. Your sense of smell is particularly important. When you chew, the mashed up food releases chemicals that travel way up your nose to special smell receptors that help inform the flavor. If you ever had a bad cold or allergies, you might have noticed that food becomes a bit more flavorless. That's because those smell receptors in the upper part of your nasal cavity are swollen, stuffed up, and not able to take in the chemicals released by the food you're eating. So, without smell, your brain thinks the meal is just bland. In order to get the full flavor out of your food, you also need to chew it into small enough pieces, and you need to have plenty of spit in your mouth. As you chew, you release more and more flavor molecules trapped inside whatever you're eating. The drool and saliva in your mouth help pull those molecules out of the food where your taste buds can pick them up. So, how does your tongue taste things? Well, as it turns out, it does it with little taste buds and a lot of help from the rest of your mouth and the rest of your senses. So, next time you eat your absolute favorite food and it perfectly hits the spot, you can thank all your senses for working so perfectly together to bring you the world's best flavor. Teamwork! Why do we sometimes lose our voice? In order to understand why we lose our voice sometimes, we first need to know how our voice works in the first place. Any sound you make with your mouth, from talking to singing to burping, is the result of your vocal cords vibrating. Vocal cords are 2 small folds of muscle inside your voice box in your throat. The volume, pitch, tone, and all-around sound of your voice depends on the size of those vocal cords. The bigger they are, the deeper your voice sounds. And the smaller they are, the higher it sounds. Why does all that vibration sound like a voice? Well, think of your vocal cords a bit like the small opening at the bottom of a balloon. If the balloon is tied up or your vocal cords are closed, no air escapes. If the balloon is untied and air flows out, that's a bit like breathing out. But if you grab the small opening and stretch it out, you can control how much air escapes. When you let out a little air, the vibrations might be more high-pitched than if you let out a lot of air. That's the same way our vocal cords work. Okay, so that's how our vocal cords vibrate to give us our voice, but why do we sometimes lose it? Well, anytime you yell, scream, or sing your lungs out, you're kicking those vocal cords into high gear and causing them to vibrate so hard that they bash together with each vibration. Over time, this makes your vocal cords red and swollen, causing them to vibrate differently than normal and making your voice sound low, raspy, and hoarse. The same thing can happen when you're sick. An infection can irritate your vocal cords, causing them to get all swollen and red, just like if you were screaming. Sometimes they can get so swollen that it becomes hard to even speak. We call this losing your voice. Sometimes the vocal cords continue to swell even after you've finished yelling. That's why you might lose your voice a few hours later or even the next day. So, next time you lose your voice, just relax. It's super common and super not a big deal. Maybe just less yelling. why do we get bruises? We've all been there. You're playing, running around, having a ball, when all of a sudden, wham! You trip and fall, bumping your knee against the ground. Ouch! But it's okay. There's no cut, so no problem. You probably even keep playing, eventually forgetting all about your fall. But maybe a few hours later, you might notice your knee feels a bit tender to the touch. So you look down and see a brand new bruise right in the spot where you hit your knee earlier. A bruise, or contusion as experts call it, happens when your skin isn't cut open, but the tiny blood vessels just beneath your skin, called capillaries, break. All those broken little blood vessels just beneath the surface of the skin start to ooze blood, a bit like a leaky water pipe. That blood starts to collect beneath the skin, giving our bruises their color. That's also why it takes a little time for a bruise to form. Just like a leaking pipe, the blood leaks out slowly until there's enough to form the bruise. If you happen to get a nice big bruise, it'll probably change color several times before it disappears. Usually starting red, then fading to purple, blue, and sometimes even green or yellow. The colors start to change from red to purple and blue because the body is starting to fix the damage. The red blood cells are broken down and start to clear it all out. As the dead, broken down blood cells are cleared away, the bruise might turn yellow or green before finally fading away for good, leaving your skin looking like nothing ever happened. There are a few basic ways to help avoid getting bumps and bruises when you're out playing, like wearing extra pads when you're riding a bike, skateboard, or rollerblades. Unfortunately, it's kinda hard to totally avoid getting bruises, so it doesn't hurt to know what's going on just below the surface. But it definitely does hurt to touch a bruise, so poke and prod at your own risk. Why do we have toes? You may have noticed that animals have all kinds of toes in all different shapes and sizes. Birds have sharp, grabby toes. Elephants seem to barely even have toes on their tree trunk-like legs and feet. Geckos have sticky toes. Alpacas have two big, sturdy toes. Primates usually have big, strong feet with very long, flexible toes and a thumb-like opposable finger for gripping and swinging. Humans? Well, we're somewhere in the middle. Compared to other animals, our toes are fairly small for our feet. They aren't sharp like a bird or sticky like a gecko. They aren't extra good at gripping like a primate, so what's the point? Why do humans have toes? Do we actually use them? Well, it turns out we definitely do. Well, most of them at least. Our toes might not be great for swinging from branch to branch or climbing up walls, but they are key to balance and foot support while you move. The human foot is split into three basic parts: the heel and ankle area, called the hindfoot, the arch and the bell, known as the midfoot, and the forefoot, which is made up of the toes. Whenever we walk with a standard step, our foot tends to touch the ground in the back first and roll forward towards the toes. The strong ankle and hard heel of the hindfoot is perfect for making first contact. It's tough, hard, and able to withstand all the weight without much problem. But as the step continues, we roll our foot forward, putting the weight of your midfoot on the ground. Muscles and tendons in your foot and ankle help support the impact, a bit like shocks in a car. Next, the heel lifts up off the ground, rolling you further forward from your midfoot onto your toes, who help you push off the ground into your next step. All that happens with each and every step you take. So our toes might not be nimble as a monkey's or as sticky as a gecko's, but without them, balancing on our feet would be tricky business. In fact, your big toe can withstand close to twice as much weight as your other four toes combined. And if the big toe is most important, the puny little pinky toe is definitely the least. Pinkies hold the least weight of any toe, and honestly, don't do all that much to keep us balanced. In fact, without a pinky toe, you probably wouldn't have much problem at all keeping your balance. So, why do we have toes? Because without them, we'd be doing a lot less walking and a lot more falling.